All right, let's do this. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you are hearing this, you have once again tuned into the Consequence of Habit podcast. This is your host, JT. And I want to start off with a huge thank you. I looked at my stats right before jumping on the mic here, and I did this, 4 or 5 episodes ago. And this thing's growing, man. We are in 21 different countries, which blows my mind. Now I'm literally looking at my phone, the countries on here now. Dude, Albania, I mentioned you guys before, but God, you continue to show this little podcast a lot of support. So I want to say thank you to them. But man, Australia, Egypt, Canada, Spain, Germany, India, Ireland, Serbia, Saudi Arabia, Albania, I'll mention you again. That's how I'm feeling. Shit, I might move there the way things are going around here. Netherlands, Sweden, France. The list goes on. Well, it goes on 21 times and then it stops. But thank you guys. And anyone who's left a review, there's been some really kind things said on these reviews, and it means a lot. If you haven't left a review, I ask you a favor. Please leave a review, good, bad, indifferent, whatever you're feeling. I don't even know exactly how it helps, but I know there's people smarter than me with much bigger podcasts saying that there's something in the algorithm or helps with the searches or, I don't know. It's not my wheelhouse. All I know is it's supposed to really help. So if you could leave a review, it would mean a lot to me. And with that said, this is the part where I usually talk about Athletic Brewing Company and then we get into the guest. But we're going to bypass the Athletic Brewing Company only because we have one of their own on the podcast this week. We have on Mr. Mason Gravley. Mason is the lead adventurer. That's his title. Dude, I want to work someplace where they even have that title. I don't need it. I deal with Mason a lot just because I'm an ambassador for Athletic Brewing Company. And I got to tell you, he's one of the most responsive people I've ever met, dealt with in my life. I email this guy and within sometimes a minute, I get a return email. Super nice guy, great story. He fits that title of the lead adventurer. My only gripe is we're at a crossroads. Yes, I hold the title of ambassador for Athletic Brewing, but man, I sure do want attaché instead. And it's like, no matter how hard I try, they won't budge. I don't even know if this joke's going over, but I don't know. I like that secret. There's something secret about attaché. Dude, if you're an attaché, I feel like you woke up in some foreign country and had fighting skills you didn't know you had, or you've got like a P.O. box with different passports and foreign currency. That's what I want. All right. Enough. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mason Gravley. All right, thanks for tuning in. This is the Consequence of Habit podcast. Hey, I want to say a huge thanks to Mr. Mason Gravley for coming on. Mason, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks, JT. Good to be here.
So anyone who's listened to my podcast has heard a whole lot of advertisements for Athletic Brewing. And to be honest with you, it's been a huge part of my process of looking at my relationship with alcohol and stepping away from it. And Athletic Brewing is almost been like, having my cake and eating it too. So I can still have my my awesome beer and just without all the other bad stuff. But I want to make sure this isn't just an Athletic Brewing paid advertisement, because that's really, I'd love to do. I could talk about it all day, but I want to get into your story. We spoke a little bit before this podcast started. Mason, how did you get involved with Athletic Brewing, and what led up to that?
Oh man, that's a Yeah, I appreciate you saying, you don't want this to be a paid ad, but it's like athletic just becomes part of your life, athletic brewing. It's so ingrained in kind of what I identified with before. So just the fact that I eventually got on board, it just makes total sense. It makes it easy to just talk about, but, yeah, man. So let's go back. Well, one reason I was very excited to join this team was when I was born. I was born at a very young age. I'm just playing. That's a dad joke for you. But no, my dad used to be an alcoholic, and it's something he talks about a lot. And when he found out that my mom was pregnant with me, he was, it was a mistake. They had just met at a party. And he was like, "Oh my God, I got to get my life together." So what he did was he had a beer in his hand and he set it down on this phone booth, and he hasn't touched one since. And so sobriety and just, commitment to things was something that I knew from an early age. And it's not that, we're against alcohol at all, and you have to be sober. I love, I really enjoy a good beer, but I just knew that there was that whole side of living at an early age. So we talked a lot about alcohol, but he drank non-alcoholic beer all the time as a kid. So when I eventually joined Athletic Brewing, I was very excited because of that. It's like, hey, this is an answer for folks like my dad, but also for me who enjoy beer, but because of all the things they like to do athletically, maybe they don't want a beer, the night before an early morning kayak or climb or a hike or something. Or they're just, you're out on an adventure and you don't want to overconsume because you're exhausted and your body's worn down, and alcohol just kind of magnifies the lack of sleep or recovery when you're out on a multi-day adventure. So kind of, how I got into it was we were talking a little bit before you recorded. I host a show myself called the Adventure Sports Podcast. And that's really just talking about, honestly, stories about adventure all over the world. This is everything from long extended endurance adventures to really quick overnight things that take 12 hours away from home that you can really have in a day or over a weekend, and just basically how to get more adventure in your life. And so the founder of Athletic Brewing was just a big fan of the show. We became friends through the podcast and eventually joined the team to kind of help spur adventure inside the company. It's been fun.
Yeah, sounds like it. So you've been a adventure fan or for a long time. Where did that come from? Was that something you growing up, you were just involved in adventure sports, outdoor activity, or was that something just later on in life?
Yeah, man, I think I have to credit both my parents. They're not adventurers by any means, but my mother never let me quit anything. And then my dad was just kind of a wild child. He, it feels like even to this day, like I'm the adult sometimes in the room. He's the kind of person that just wants to, blow up a pile of gunpowder for no reason. You know what I mean? Just like do these crazy things.
Yeah, I like it.
He's great, but it's so between those two, is a great recipe for just kind of thinking outside the box in a lot of ways. So, early, I'm from a small town in the South in Central Florida, and if anybody knows anything about Florida, is once you get away from the coast, you're pretty much in Alabama or Georgia. It gets very southern, very rural, very fast. And, so we grew up with farm animals kind of out in the country. And, I never saw myself leaving that area, but, went off to college and, didn't have a family history of college. So it was just totally eye-opening for me, and just found this world of travel, and then, also just kind of pursuing things in a different way. College definitely taught me to think outside the box. And so, one summer in college, my buddy and I, my roommate and I, and my best friend now, still my best friend, we just had this kind of crazy idea. We really wanted to do something crazy that summer, and for a cause. We were both very passionate about, doing something, to make a difference in the world. And we're naive, we're 20-year-olds. And so we had this big world map on our wall in our dorm room. Actually, it was in our apartment off campus. And, we were just sitting around one day, sitting on the couch talking, and I'm like, man, let's just do something crazy this summer. And he was like, well, let's do the Appalachian Trail or something. And I had actually never heard of the Appalachian Trail. So he told me all about it. And I thought it was awesome. But then we just kind of kept talking, and eventually came up with this idea of like biking. Could we bike somewhere? Do people travel on bicycles? We thought we were coming up with this super novel idea. But by the end of the conversation, we had determined that we were going to fly to Alaska, get bicycles, and then bike all the way home to Florida, to Central Florida. Wow. And we kind of, we kind of verbally shook on it, agreed to it, and went off to class. And, heck, 6 months later, we were on a plane to Alaska trying to bike back home. It was crazy. So that's kind of where it started.
You said you tried. It didn't. You guys weren't able to finish the whole thing, or what happened?
Oh no, we finished, but it was just crazy. So school got out in May, and then 2 days later, we flew one way to Fairbanks. Had bicycles there. And just rode our bikes back home over the course of the whole summer. We took almost the whole summer. I still had to go back to school. He had graduated. So, we made it all the way back. Didn't have any idea what we were doing. Really never camped much. I grew up hunting and fishing. That was pretty much the extent of my outdoor experience. It was very helpful, but also totally different than bike travel. But yeah, so that first adventure is really what kind of set my life on one of thinking this way and doing these kinds of things.
Yeah, because when you think Florida, when I hear something like the title of the podcast, which is the Adventure Sports Podcast, I'm thinking rock climbing, I'm thinking hardcore mountain biking, kayaking, and when I think Florida, those aren't the things that pop up in my mind, obviously, because there's no mountains in Florida. You eventually moved out west. How long after you get done with college do you pack up all your stuff and start heading out? You were in Colorado, correct?
Yeah, I was in Colorado for quite a few years. I had crazy story. I ended up biking more and more. So after that first Alaska trip, just every summer, pretty much, I'd do a cross-country bike trip. So for like 6 years, I would do a long distance adventure like that. And, more so on the bike. And then in the fall at school, I played basketball a few years for the college. So that's what I did kind of in the wintertime. And then all summer, bike travel or adventure, hiking. Didn't do a whole lot of like long distance hiking. But just my mind was turned to, the gears were always turning for those long distance endurance trip. And I just happened to jump on the bike each time and just would try to go to somewhere I'd wanted to go. Well, I ended up loving the West so much that I just stayed out there, lived and worked in Yosemite National Park for a while. I met a woman technically, and we actually knew each other from Florida, and she would come out west to see me. And we ended up getting married and just kind of settling in Denver for a while. But she came to see me out in Vegas, and we just ended up eloping one of the times she came to see me. So always kind of making decisions like that, making decisions on the fly without a whole lot of thought. And for better or worse, that kind of kept me out west for a long time in the Denver area.
Hey, what's your family thinking? Obviously, we've actually never met in person. I've talked to you before just about athletic brewing stuff, but what's your family back in Florida thinking, man, this guy's out of his mind. He's flying up to Alaska. He's riding his bike across the country. What's their initial response when you tell them what your plans are going to be?
Yeah. No, it's, and this is by no means, people have done such incredible things. The guests you have on this show are so amazing. I've blown away by some of the people you've been able to have and the stories they have and the life experiences they have. So this is, I'm having lots of fun compared to a lot of the people that have been on this show. And so I don't want to sit here and think, oh, look what, I've done anything really all that important. I just really enjoyed it and really just loved, landscapes and being out west. And my family definitely thought it was crazy. Like I said, everyone's from this little town in Florida, very southern, very rural. very much the black sheep of my family, but also, I would try to get my family involved. I had to get my dad come out there and see me a few times. My mom would come out, friends would come out and join. And, man, I definitely was viewed as someone a lot different. And especially after staying out there, my wife and I both are the only people in our whole families that didn't live there in that area. So, just after living out there quite a few years, we just had a son about a year ago, and just got to thinking and decided that, as much as we love the West, as much as we want to stay out there was definitely this part of me that wanted to come back home and kind of bring, these things I've learned back to where I'm from, to help kind of spread that gospel of adventure in the outdoors. And it's definitely scary, thinking like, oh my gosh, leaving my network. It was scarier to move back home than it was to move away. That's for sure. But as an adult now and having to make more mature decisions, it's definitely feels like the right thing to do. And I feel this peace about it that I didn't have out West. I don't know, man. That's I'm kind of getting in the weeds a little bit.
No. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But there is something about just being home. Like I lived out in California. I was in the military, and I got out of the military. I was living out in like Northern California. And as much as I loved being there, like geographically, I'd never been around true mountains before. And I was super into adventure stuff. I got into rock climbing. I grew up cycling. I grew up racing road bikes and mountain bikes. All my younger life, but there's something about a connection to where you're from that a lot of times it just drug me back. It always brought me back, and I like the thought of taking what you were learning out there and then bringing that back home, because when you're surrounded by just like-minded people, it's great. It's always nice, but there is I like the thought of bringing back that sense of adventure and that sense of being outside. Because I believe, and I think you'll agree, that brings a sense of peace to me that not that many people, I think everyone can feel it. They just need to know that it's there to be had.
Definitely. And it's not to say like, oh, I'm coming back enlightened to people that don't know anything. That sounds incredibly but pretentious. But I will say, I view home in a totally different way. And we're not living like in anybody's backyard. We're still, a few hours from family, but much closer for the grandkids, or for the grandparents to see their only grandchild right now. But yeah, man, just kind of growing up and becoming a man. I felt like that time out West is going to be back at some point in some way. But I really needed to trust, this journey, this path that, hey, I could never go on a hike or never go up in the mountains without feeling this pang of guilt about, people are struggling back home, or we could just be living a more whole life, not necessarily an easier life or anything, but just a more rounded out life. And honestly, being back 2 months now, I can't be happier. It's been awesome. And so just seeing our best friends on a weekly basis, seeing our family on a weekly basis, it almost brings a tear to my eye, saying I absolutely live for mountains, live for really the American West is what I've, did a lot of traveling during those times, a few years ago, but what I really fell in love with was just the American West. So love it out there. But it's going to be there. And just got to trust that we got to take care of the people that we love, our family. So, definitely feels like the right thing. But, I will say I've only been back 2 months, and for 40 days of that, I was biking across country with Athletic Bruins team. So it hasn't really felt too settled yet. And so I'm still kind of getting the best of both worlds. We'll see how it works out after being home a year. I don't know.
Well, I want to definitely get into that. So first I want to say, and you've probably heard it 1,000 times, is you have a very understanding wife, because she's for a lot of different reasons. And unless somebody follows you, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but you set out on a 40-day trip right after you moved down to Florida in a house that needed, I think to say it needed some work is an understatement, right?
Oh yeah, man. It was a project. I'm sitting, it needed work, and then we tore a bunch of stuff up before I left. So yeah, it was a mess.
And then did she break something? I feel like there was some medical thing that happened also right before you went, or were you gone during that?
JT, man, you did your homework, brother. That's some good research right there. Yes. So we're moving in actually, and we're hauling in the couch, and she's in flip flops. I love her to death, but she is so stubborn sometimes. And I was like, you shouldn't be wearing flip flops. She's like, I'm fine. Rolls her ankle, breaks it totally. I thought the couch had like something in it that snapped. It sounded like a 2x4 breaking in half, but it was her ankle. And so we rushed her to the hospital. It's heavy COVID, the early July or late June, early July here in Florida was, bonkers for COVID. So, yes. I mean, we couldn't see her. We couldn't even get near. It was wild, man. And then just a few weeks later, I'm flying to Connecticut to do this 40-day bike ride across the country. So yeah, she's I'll probably never quite understand just how understanding she is.
Yeah. I imagine not. That takes a special person to give you the green light for something like that. But this trip now, I listened to the podcast and I reached out to you right after I listened to it. Now, I want to start off and again, tell me if I'm saying this wrong, but to promote the new brewery that was out in San Diego, and you guys took over it's the old Ballast Point Brewery, correct?
Yes, it's the old. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so you guys took a baton, which would later become a what is it? A tap?
A tap handle.
A tap handle.
Yep.
From Connecticut, from the original Athletic Brewing brewery in Connecticut, and then you rode that by bike. The initial plan was to ride that by bike across the country and then end up in San Diego. Except you almost died along the way. So if you could just give a quick synopsis on what happened on that, because that story, it blew my mind when I was listening to it.
Yeah, man. So you're 100% right, JT. When we first found out as a company, like, hey, we're going to be opening a second brewery, like right on the coast, right on the West Coast in San Diego. Well, our brewery in Connecticut is literally like 150 yards from the ocean. It's right there. So I thought, the team thought like, hey, what can we do that's unique, that lives up to our brand, our name, our ethos of opening the second brewery. And my first thought, with all my experience was, hey, let's ride a bike. I mean, right. Why not? It's perfect. It's coast to coast, baby. So it's obviously athletic and it's a challenge. It's a heck of a lot more exciting than cutting a ribbon. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. And, it's probably the worst year ever to plan a coast to coast bike ride with everything going on. But we determined that with it just being a very, very small team, kind of self-contained, we were going to be able to pull it off. And we just monitored everything. It was just kind of, touch and go there right up until we left. And we ended up leaving. And we had riders like switching off. So people would ride, a few hundred miles over the course of a few days. And then we'd switch to a new rider, either someone fresh coming in for the whole trip, for their segment, or just kind of the folks in the van switching off. So it was kind of pieced together like that. And everyone was handing off this one baton. This one baton was being carried the whole time, a running baton. And, it was going to be a tap handle. It was symbolic, like, hey, we're carrying this baton across America. While our expansion across the country has been crazy, non-alcoholic beer. I tell people all the time, we sell non-alcoholic beer for a living every day. Yeah. What that trains your mind to do is think that, any other crazy idea you hear just doesn't sound that crazy. Right. You're literally doing something that people think is impossible for a living. So everything else sounds a lot more doable. So yeah, man, we're about halfway through this trip, 20, almost 3 weeks in, and I may be closer to 2 weeks in. Actually, we're just about halfway. and I'm biking. Our rider had knocked out like 120 miles that day, and he hands the baton off to me. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of make it easier. I wasn't scheduled to ride that day, but I just wanted to kind of put in some extra miles and make it easier for the rider the next day. And so I said, you know what? We're super early in the day. It was just after lunch, and he had already crushed these miles. Chris
Good
Bailey,
God.
if you're listening, that was an epic day. And I was like, let me just knock out an extra 30 or so miles. So I take the baton, I jump on the bike, and I start going, and I get like 10 miles in, having a great day. Honestly, it was beautiful out. I was listening to a podcast of all things, and on my aftershocks, my headphones that I don't know if you've seen them. They don't plug in your ears. So super safe, totally aware, totally fine road. The road wasn't great, but it wasn't non-cyclable, if that makes sense. Like, people ride this road. And man, freaking got hit by a truck. Like, this truck comes up behind me going full speed, just kind of breaks that whole. It was so bizarre, man. Just totally clear, beautiful day, and then all of a sudden, just this crash out of nowhere. It's so unprecedented. It's not like you see a storm that's come in or hear something going down. It just was like boom. And what happened was this truck got super close to me, and it clipped me right the side of the bike hit the truck, and the mirror of the truck hit me square in the back and just snapped off. And thank God, it bends backwards, a mirror of a vehicle, or if it was something that hit me that wasn't breakaway like that, it would have been awful. But the mirror didn't just bend back. It just completely snapped the whole frame of the mirror off, the whole thing, the motor, everything. And the glass, of the mirror just shattered everywhere. And crazily enough, it didn't knock me off the bike. It just startled the hell out of me, of course. Uh-huh. I come to a stop. I immediately look at the vehicle, and I couldn't see the license plate. It was too far away. It was flying, man. If I've had millions of vehicles probably go by me over the last go past me in the last 10 years. And this one was flying. Like, I know what it feels like when a vehicle's just going really quick by you. And this one was one of those. But thank God I was all right. And, yeah, man, it was a crazy, crazy day.
So you could hear it in your voice on the podcast, because it was real fresh at the time, and you really went into perspective on, well, one, this could have killed me, right? I mean, legit. If this was a truck from the 1980s that doesn't have that breakaway mirror, if it doesn't kill you, you're probably paralyzed. And you used it, and this is what I like about it, is you kind of used it as a platform to go from here on just how to treat each other. Because the initial reaction on something like that is, I'm going to find out who this mother effer is, and we're gonna deal with this. And I liked how you took the incident and really just used it as a way to say, hey, look, let's just try and be kind to each other. Let's look out for each other. Things aren't that important, because I mean, that's just the world we live in, right? I mean, everyone makes a stance, and cyclists right now, like I grew up road cycling, and I'm scared. I'm scared to get on a road bike and ride around, just because, well, one, cell phones. I think cell phones have changed everything.
Yeah, totally.
And then the other one is, it's just people don't care on how they treat each other, specifically strangers. So it's definitely a scary world. Now, you guys ended up switching, which I thought was a wise decision at the time, on exactly what was the transition from that point when you said, all right, listen, this is just not safe. Let's try this differently.
Yeah, man. We took some time. Yeah. So that podcast I recorded, it was, I think, day of or the next day. And yeah, definitely was thinking about things, and definitely wasn't that angry. It was more just, I was really sad that someone, it's funny as that it is, I just really was sad for just, obviously social justice issues and COVID, everything. There's so much going on this year, as we all know. It was just like, dang, man, can you not just treat somebody? Right. I mean, it's kind of all over. Could you not run me over? If you could just not hit me with your truck, that would be cool. Yeah. I mean, cycling awareness and safety is not the biggest issue this year. I know that, but it was just this theme of can we not just be kind? And so I was actually asked on the trip by one of the riders, like, what's the one principle you want to teach your son? And I was like, honestly, I don't care if he's dumb as a brick. I just want him to be kind to people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, as corny as that sounds, I just feel like that solves a lot of our issues. Anyone I know that has a lot of drama in their life or a lot of, misfortune or just a lot of just bad luck, it's usually stems from anger, from the way they treat people.
Yes.
And so I just see the people who are kind in my life, whether they're rich or poor, or smart or or not. The folks that are the kindest seem to have the best lives, the most satisfied, the most, even adventurous lives. And so I really think that is what I want him to learn in this world is like, hey, the moment you start treating everyone with kindness around you, you don't hold grudges, you don't hold things against people. You don't presume negative intentions with anyone. You will be taken advantage of and you will be screwed over time to time, but you're not going to hold it against people. You're not going to hold it against yourself. I've got a grandfather that's incredibly generous and lets just about everything in the world slide off his back. I've watched him get screwed over time and time again, but internally, man, it doesn't bother him. So, I mean, it's almost like it never happened, And so as a person and as an individual, I just feel like he's one of the most peaceful people I've ever met. And it's like, I'm trying to aspire to that because you can definitely be pretty angry about something like that, understandably, but it really doesn't serve any good. You can't find this person. You don't know where they are. And, it would just be harmful to you in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was a podcast. I think I called it like a PSA. I'm talking about just that. I mean, just, everything we're going through, whether it's the fires, whether it's the pandemic, there was a time that we circled the wagons and we rallied and we looked after each other. And for whatever reason, I think social media, I think the regular media's got a lot to do with it, but everyone's kind of, they've picked a side. And unfortunately, that's just bred that, hey, it's my team or your team and there's a lot of anger out there. And I applaud you because from that point on, I think I would be looking for a Ford F-150 missing the passenger side mirror. And that you're right. That would, whether you found the person or not, and you could have done whatever, but it doesn't really change anything. If anything, the guy's going to hate cyclists even more. So
yeah,
I think I got a new pitch. I think the problem with cycling now, this is, like I said, coming from a guy who really enjoys cycling, the spandex isn't helping us. I think we need like fake face tattoos or something. We got
right.
We got to do something to change our image.
Need leather jackets.
Something a little more intimidating. So I don't know. So you guys, you end up switching your plans on how you're going to do it, but eventually you end up making out to San Diego. And how did that go?
Yeah, man. And sorry, I totally didn't answer your other question, but I think you're right with the spandex. It's like we look like aliens in these towns. And, and I was wearing a little bit more baggy shorts because I don't really love the cycling bib. Usually try to wear mountain bike shorts anyway. Yeah. Just to kind of not feel so weird. But so that whole, what happened? We did it. We decided to continue after just kind of thinking about it. We took the next day off. There wasn't an off day that day. And what happened right after I got hit, man, within 10 minutes of meeting up with a van, I decided to keep going. I was like, I was pretty angry, honestly, that first day. And so I'm glad we didn't encounter anyone. And so I was like, I'm going to ride these miles. I had 20 miles left. And I'm like, I'm going to do them. And I was scared. Don't get me wrong. I was looking over my shoulder every time I heard a car behind me. Right. I was like, I cannot let this dude win. This dude or female. I don't know who it was. Could have been everybody out there was driving a truck. Yeah. So within 10 minutes of starting again, this truck pulls over in the road, in the shoulder, gets out. This older fella jumps out, screaming at me, flicking me off. Grabs the handlebar. I come to a stop because I'm like, oh shoot, this guy's about to start something. And I literally just got hit by a truck.
Literally.
He says, he's yelling at me. By the time I pull up, he's saying, you people need to get off the road. Y'all don't pay. He goes, I paid taxes for you to be on those bike trails. You're keeping people from earning a living. And he grabs my handlebars to make sure I don't bike past him. And I'm like, there is no way I'm engaging with this person just because they're senseless. They're senseless. I mean, I grew up in Florida. I know who Florida man is. I have a million of them in my family. Yeah. It's like people who are willing to ruin their lives over the smallest of arguments or confrontations. Oh, yeah. Yep. And you just can't engage because it's like this person, you know, literally in my hometown a month ago, these dudes were fighting over a pickup truck and 3 of them ended up dead. And it's that kind of senselessness. And so you just can't engage with recklessness like that. So I was like, this guy is screaming at me and I'm just like, dude, I said, I pay taxes. I'm from a rural area. And I just kept going. I got around, you know, I kind of got him off the handlebars and just left. And he was sitting there yelling. Went back by me again. I obviously got off the road so he wouldn't hit me because, you know, that's someone with that much anger. So there was a handful of instances like that day, including getting hit. So all of that caused us to say, we've got to do something different here. And up until that point had really no issues at all. And so what we did is like, hey, we're obviously not welcome in these areas. Let's just move the trip. Obviously we can't, you know, risk anyone else getting hit or injured. It would just be awful. It would obviously be terrible for the company. It'd be, you know, that's such an afterthought when it comes to people's safety, but in the long run, it would just be really, really reckless on our end. And so we said to ourselves, let's move the whole journey to really safe bike paths, to trails, to rail trails, to national parks, or to just areas in general where people expect and see a lot more cyclists where, you know, there's bike lanes and stuff. So initially we just stuck strictly to bike paths. And man, I'll have to say the first day we did it, the very first day we moved the whole journey. We sent an email to all the riders. This is like the one thing they've been training for all year because everything else was canceled. Everyone was pretty bummed, but I'll be honest, every rider just said, all right, let's figure it out. Let's you know, I was committed to do, you know, for instance, the Grand Canyon to, you know, Las Vegas or something, or San Diego or LA. And everyone just said, you know, all right, we'll pivot. This is fine. You know, it'll be better. And so we kept saying, it's going to be better. It's going to be better, man. Well, day one, we ended up doing the new route and we met just so many people who immediately gravitated towards Athletic Brewing because we had our van parked at trailheads. We were picking up trash on the trails. Thankfully I was fine physically. So I was out the next day. You know, I was a little sore for the next few weeks, but nothing major. And so it was an incredible pivot. And that night we actually go to this little bar that's right on the bike path, and it's built for people using the bike path and using the little campground right there. We get to talking to the bar, the bar manager and the folks working there. And, one of them had just, you know, recently cut back on drinking and was looking for a good non-alcoholic beer option. Gave him some of our beer, man, almost brought this guy to tears. We get to talking to him and we just start talking about life. And he's like, yeah, man, we're getting ready to go to this little town in Florida where my mom moved. And, I was like, oh, well, you know, what is it? He goes, oh, this little, you know, POS town. Right. And I was like, well, what's the name of it? He said, it's Frostproof. I said, you've got to be kidding me, man. That's where I'm from. That's my hometown. And this was in the middle of Iowa. It was just so many cool instances like that where it felt like a confirmation in a lot of ways that we had made the right decision to keep going. And so like I said, we got to kind of break out of this. We have to stick to this path and move the baton in a single, you know, streamline across the country to let's honestly go where it makes the most sense for us to go. Yeah. And so for the next, you know, 2.5, 3 weeks, we ended up doing that and just connecting with probably 10 times more people than we would have if we would have stuck to the original path. So it ended up being an incredible pivot and still got all our miles in. So the one thing we did commit to was every rider still had to get the miles, whether it was 300 miles or 200 or 500 even, they had to get those miles in the same amount of days, just in a different path. And so it ended up making some really cool personal challenges too. So we got to ride from everywhere from Zion National Park to Bryce Canyon, the Badlands, the Grand Canyon, North and South Rim, all through Grand Staircase Escalante, through Las Vegas, across the Hoover Dam, like all sorts of iconic places.
Yes.
And, just beautiful, beautiful places. And we did a ride from LA pretty much down the coast to San Diego to finish off the race, or to finish off the event on the last day. And so, yeah, that very last day we had probably 30 riders join us from the San Diego area, finished at the brewery, man, and got there and celebrated the grand opening of our second brewery. It was pretty cool.
It's funny because I was out in San Diego and I've actually visited the brewery when it was Ballast Point.
Cool.
And was drinking then. So I quit drinking about a year and a half ago. And I remember having too many, was it Scalpin, I think was their one of their beers, and ordering fish tacos from the worst hole in the wall you've ever seen in your entire life, like going back to my hotel. I mean, I think I ordered from like a cage. Like you couldn't even see the person on the other side. It was like,
oh man,
it was bad. I didn't know if I was at a Mexican restaurant, or I was supposed to be giving, what was it when you see a priest, but you can't see him through,
confession.
Yeah, like I was giving confession because I was ordering fish tacos. So it was wild. So I was excited to see you guys. I'm excited to see the company expand. And like you said, that guy almost came to tears. And I'm here to tell you that, again, at risk of sounding like an infomercial, what you guys have done is you found a niche. Because before that, if you didn't drink alcohol, but you liked good beer, there weren't options. There just weren't really a whole lot of options. And you've taken something and I give it to as many people as I can. And I'm trying to get people on the podcast because my friends all still drink beer. And these are beer snobs. And, I'm a self-proclaimed beer snob too. And I'll say, hey, do you want to try this non-alcoholic beer? And the first thing they said is like, no, I'm good. What is this like? And they'll name another popular non-alcoholic beer. I go, no, I'm here to tell you, I'll put it on par with anything you're drinking. And dude, they're shocked. They're absolutely shocked. And it's just giving options. It's giving options. And like you said, for people that are looking that are, even if you're just not a person that decides that alcohol doesn't fit in their life, if you're just doing something athletic, I can't tell you how many times when I was living in California that I didn't start a trip, like a climbing trip or a biking or something. Well, it really doesn't even have to be athletics. Just starting your day feeling like dog shit. Because you had too much the night before, and this just gives you the option, man. Gives you the option to still enjoy it and still, you don't have to tell anybody else when they're like, hey man, why are you drinking seltzer water? Like this, I just love the product. I really believe it. There's few products or companies that I truly believe in, and this is definitely by far one. And before you go, I know you're short on time. If you could just say some of the things that Athletic Brewing is doing other than just making beer, like what are some of the trail things you're doing? What are some of the other projects they're involved in?
Yeah. Man, I really appreciate you saying all that. That's what we set out to do. You're not gonna succeed making an inferior product that's so revolutionary in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to market it is what it is, you got to come through with the product too. Right. So I can't tell you how many people, personally, I don't tell people it's non-alcoholic, especially if I think there's going to be hesitation. I just let them drink it. And then I tell them after, and then their mind's really blown because they have no bias going into it, and, or let them read it on the can. So yeah, man. So like I said before, because we're doing something that's really out of the box, we try to do our whole company out of the box. We try to constantly think of, how can we make a bigger impact? How can we turn other things on their heads? So one of the first things, our founder, Bill, when he decided he wanted to cut back on drinking, he was, inevitably started, doing more healthy things like running and marathons and stuff, and realized, he would leave New York City where he was living at the time to go to these trails and to just kind of get out of the city, get away from that lifestyle and just get a break from the city. And, just saw all these beautiful places that were being really, really heavily used, but maybe not heavily funded when it comes to being taken care of or well maintained. So he made the commitment there. If I ever start this brewery that I'm thinking about, non-alcoholic beer, I want to commit a percentage of the sales to cleaning and maintaining parks and trails. And so when he started the company, we built this program called 2 for the Trails. And so 2% of all our sales right off the top is donated to parks and trails all over the country. And this year we weren't able to kind of push events like we were hoping, but next year we definitely are, because we're starting to pick them up as right before winter's hitting of these 2 for the Trail cleanup days. So we do, anytime we partner with an organization like Leave No Trace or the Appalachian Mountain Club or, a number, literally dozens of trails and organizations around the country, we always want to do a trail day. And that's where we invite our community out. Employees are always welcome to go and spend their work day, their paid work day, working on these trails and taking care of these places. Cause, man, for so many of us, the outdoors is our refuge. I know for me it is. And so whenever I'm out there now, it's like I always bring either a pocket that's empty or a bag to pick up trash anytime we're out there, just because if everybody did that every time they went, it would be pristine. Yeah. And so we do things like that. We donate, with kind of all the social justice going on. We donated a bunch of money for that. When COVID hit, we donated over, we just set a fund like, hey, 10% of all our sales for the next 2 months are going to be donated to restaurant workers that are being laid off right now, and bartenders and all that. And that raised, $100,000. We ended up doing a beer. We sent a whole line of an IPA this year for the Pan Mass Challenge, which is this cycling ride across Massachusetts that raises money for cancer. That raised like $75,000, and none of that's to toot our horn, but it's like at any given time, there is a lot of pretty decent percentage of our sales, not our profit, just our sales going out the door to these organizations. Yeah. And we believe, as a company that's selling non-alcoholic beer, it's going to take that. It's going to take committing to our community and really being involved to make it in the long run. And we definitely want to play the long game. This isn't, non-alcoholic beer is definitely not a flash in the pan. It's very clear there was a need for this, probably 40 years ago. So we're happy that we're able to offer it now.
Yeah. And unlike some of these other, the bigger companies that have always made a different product that are now coming out with it, this has been the platform from the beginning. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I foresee this kind of being a rocket ship and big things coming. But Mason, I know you're on a time crunch, man, so I want to let you go. But if somebody wants to try some athletic brewing, where can they find you, or where can they get some? And do you still have any of that Oktoberfest in stock?
Yeah, man, that Oktoberfest was a huge hit, and that's our second Oktoberfest. We threw the first ever Oktoberfest event of the year, or in the States last year. We were going to do it again this year, of course, but couldn't happen. But if anyone wants to find us, athleticbrewing.com. We do, because we're non-alcoholic, we can ship it to your front door. So that's actually down in Florida. That's how I get the beer. There are some stores like, 30 minutes away. I just get it shipped to my front door. It's just convenient. But we're on store shelves all over the country, Whole Foods, Wegmans, Trader Joe's, stuff like that. But go to our website. There's a store finder, or just order us online. 2 6-packs or more, free shipping. Or, if you're listening to the show, just reach out to me, masong@athleticbrewing.com. Maybe I can hook you up with some. If there's a handful of people reach out, I could get you some beer just to try, if you promise to share a little bit of it with friends and family. But JT, man, I really appreciate you being on. And I'd love to tell more stories, but I got a plumber coming over. It's all that adult stuff I got to deal with. So
definitely take care of that, and make sure everybody who's listening to this, make sure you check out Mason on the Adventure Sports Podcast. Try some of that athletic brewing. I'm in talks with Mason. We're gonna see if we can get a giveaway or something going. But with that said, Mason, I appreciate your time. Get your plumbing taken care of, and we're excited to see what happens with this thing.
Cool, man. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, check out the podcast and happy to work something out with the giveaway. All right, JT, thank you, man.
Thanks.
All right.
All right, that's it from us here at the Consequence of Habit podcast. This is JT, and I am signing out. I want to say, before I do that, I want to say a big thanks to Mr. Mason Gravley, the host of the Adventure Sports Podcast, Lead Adventure Athletic Brewing Company. Please like, share, subscribe, leave comments, do all that stuff because it helps. So, and I think that's it. I'll see you guys next week.